Think of waking up from a nightmare and realising, maybe you were the villain in someone else's story. That's the question we're asking today. Not about a person, but about the most feared creature in Hawkins' lore, the Demogorgon. We all remember how it began. Lights flickering, blood on the walls, Will Byers disappearing into thin air, and at the centre of it all, this faceless, flower-headed monster that tore through walls, people, and our imaginations. In Season 1 of Stranger Things, the Demogorgon was horror incarnate, no explanation, no mercy, just teeth, claws, and screams in the dark. But what if that wasn't the whole story? Let's rewind the tape. Not to what we saw, but what we missed. What if the Demogorgon wasn't acting out of evil, but confusion? What if the first creature from the Upside Down didn't come to destroy, but to find something it had lost? It's been a few months since the gate at Hawkins' lab was closed, or at least we thought it was. Eleven's been having strange dreams again. Not the usual mind-melting nightmares or echoes from the void. These are different, softer. In them she sees the Demogorgon, but not attacking, not hunting, just wandering. It stumbles through the Upside Down like it's lost, bumping into twisted trees, staring into empty space. It avoids certain paths. It stays away from the Mind Flayer's domain. And when it stops, it doesn't roar. It makes this sound, low, almost like a whimper. At first, 11 doesn't tell anyone. Why would she? This is the monster that almost killed her friends. The monster she vaporized with her bare hands. But something about the dreams gnaws at her. Not fear, pity. Eventually, she breaks her silence. At a quiet hangout in Mike's basement, she brings it up. I saw it, in my dreams. But it wasn't angry. It felt sad. Dustin perks up. Wait, the Demogorgon. Sad, like crying in a corner sad, or emo song sad. Will, sitting nearby, looks up sharply. What did it look like? Where was it? They pull up the old lab archives. Those fuzzy grey security tapes Hopper kept hidden. Most are corrupted, but Dustin's been restoring some as a side project. And that's when they notice something weird. In several clips, the Demogorgon is seen doing something unexpected. It doesn't always attack. In fact, in some frames it avoids loud noises. It backs away from screaming patients. And in one specific tape, 111 doesn't remember filming, the creature appears to be watching her through a glass wall. Not pacing, not clawing, watching, like it recognizes her. The footage glitches, but for a split second, the Demogorgon tilts its head, the way a lost dog might. Will chills. Maybe it wasn't trying to hurt us, maybe it was trying to find something. They dig deeper. Late nights with caffeine, grainy tapes, and the dusty journals from the old lab files. And that's when a theory begins to take shape. What if the Demogorgon had been exposed to 11 before, maybe during one of her sensory deprivation tests, back when Brenner pushed her to reach farther into the void? Maybe she touched something, or maybe something touched her and never forgot it. Dustin, being Dustin, gets wild with the theory. Okay, what if it imprinted on her like a baby duck, just boom, saw her, locked in? At first it sounds ridiculous, but then they find it. A log entry buried under months of redactions. It references Entity Type A, subject displays low aggression, high sensory awareness, responsive to stimulus 011. It's dated 2 weeks before the first major breach. The date 11 made contact with something in the black and screamed so loud the lab shut down power for 10 hours. Mike leans in. So, it wasn't trying to kill her, it was trying to reach her. Will remembers the way it moved in the Upside Down, how it never came straight for him unless he made noise, how it circled Castle Byers once, slowly, then left. It's like it was searching. For the first time, the group begins to question everything. The monster, the attacks, the patterns. What if the killings weren't rage, but panic? A creature ripped from its world, controlled by forces it didn't understand, chasing the only voice it ever trusted. 11, now shaken, goes back into the void, this time voluntarily. She focuses not on the Mind Flayer, not on the new threats, but on that moment in the tank, when she touched the darkness and something reached back. Her eyes roll back, the room goes cold, and then silence. In the blackness, she sees it again. The Demogorgon, not as it was in Hawkins, but younger, smaller, less corrupted. It stands alone in a twisted forest, surrounded by shadows. A single light, 11's, shines through. It crawls toward it, slowly, carefully. Then, the light fades, and it roars. But the roar isn't violent. It's grief. She snaps out of it, gasping. Her hands tremble, and for the first time in her life, she says it out loud. It wasn't a monster, it was just broken. As the screen fades to black, a new mission begins to form. The creature isn't gone. Somewhere in the deepest layer of the Upside Down, it waits. Not to attack, but to be understood, and maybe, just maybe, it still remembers her. 11 can't shake the feeling. The image of the younger, broken Demogorgon haunts her even when she's awake. It's not just a memory, it's a message, and maybe, just maybe, a second chance. After everything they've fought, all the battles they've survived, this feels different. Not like a threat, but a mystery that demands to be solved. She tells Mike everything. Not just the vision, but the emotions she felt. Grief, loneliness, confusion. The way the creature reached for her light. Mike listens, but the weight of it is hard to accept. "Elle," he says quietly, "that thing killed people." But even he can't deny what they've seen. The creature in 11's visions didn't look like a monster. It looked like something that had been used and thrown away. Dustin, of course, is all in. We've seen weirder. Remember Dart? He pulls out a chart he's been building, tracking electromagnetic activity around Hawkins since the latest rift was closed. There's a new pattern emerging. Small pulses, almost rhythmic, like a heartbeat, and it's centered near the old forest, right where the first portal opened years ago. Will, who's been quiet through most of this, finally speaks. "It's calling to you, Elle." He doesn't say it with fear. He says it like someone who knows what it's like to be connected to something you don't understand, and maybe doesn't want to. He still dreams of the Upside Down, and lately, those dreams have shifted. No longer just shadows and screams, but soft flashes, shapes, echoes of something lost. They decide it's time to go back, not through brute force, not through a government facility, but through 11's mind. The plan is simple and stupid and dangerous. Use her powers to find whatever's sending the pulses. Make contact. Figure out what it wants. And if it's truly misunderstood, help it. Steve and Nancy insist on being there when they do it. "You're not doing this alone," Nancy says. She's grown since those early days of hunting monsters with baseball bats. Now she's more like a strategist, sharp, focused, and utterly unafraid. Steve, surprisingly, doesn't make a single joke. He just brings a flashlight, a baseball bat, and a thermos of coffee, in case it's a long night. They gather in Hopper's cabin. 11 sits in the center of the room, surrounded by salt. Her eyes flutter shut. The hum in the air builds slowly, like static warming up a radio. Then, darkness. Inside the void, the cold hits first. Not the icy cold of winter, but that thick, bone-deep cold of isolation. The kind that doesn't just freeze you, but erases you. She walks through it, barefoot, hair whipping around her face like wind underwater. Then, in the distance, a flicker. It's small, almost invisible. A pulse in the dark. She follows. What she finds isn't what anyone expects. Not a monster, not a battlefield, but a nest. Glowing softly from within are spore-like bulbs, each one pulsing with dim light. And in the center lies the creature. It's smaller than the Demogorgon they fought, less armored. Its skin is pale, almost translucent, and the petal-like head isn't fully opened. It breathes heavily, twitching every time the light pulses. When 11 steps closer, it doesn't react. Not with claws or roars, but with a low, echoing sound. A tremble. She recognizes it immediately. Fear. She kneels, reaching out. Not with her hand, but her mind. She doesn't force it. She just listens. And then it happens. Images flood her consciousness. Not words, not sentences, but feelings. The creature's memories buried under layers of control and torment. It was taken, not born in the upside down, but created, twisted from something else. The Mind Flayer used psychic manipulation to mold creatures from the void into living weapons. The Demogorgon was one of the first, but it was different. It resisted. It remembered something, or someone. 11. The moment they made contact, years ago, in the dark of the lab, a spark had been lit. To the scientists, it was data. To the creature, it was salvation. The only connection it ever felt that wasn't pain, and when she vanished, it lost everything. 11 opens her eyes, gasping. Tears stream down her face. She knows now. The attacks in Hawkins weren't calculated. They were the actions of something desperate, torn from its world, lashed by pain, and blindly reaching for the only light it had ever known. But there's something else, something worse. The creature isn't alone. In the last moments of their connection, she feels it. A ripple, another breach, something darker, stronger, still tied to the Mind Flayer. And it's coming. Back at the cabin, the air crackles as she snaps back to consciousness. It's still out there, she whispers, but it's not trying to hurt us. Then what is it trying to do? Steve asks. Find peace, she says, but it won't get the chance. Everyone in the room understands what that means. The government's already watching Hawkins again. Any sign of activity, and they'll come with guns and fire. The same playbook, the same misunderstanding. This time, 11 won't let them. She stands up. Steadier now. We have to bring it here, show them the truth, before they make the same mistake again. The group looks at each other, unsure whether to be scared or inspired, but they know this is no longer about defeating a monster. It's about saving one, and maybe in the process, saving themselves too. The forest was quiet the night they set the trap, not the peaceful kind of quiet, the eerie, anxious kind, like even the trees were holding their breath. A perimeter had been drawn around Hopper's cabin, makeshift signals installed, sensors repurposed from leftover lab equipment. Dustin and Will managed to tune the frequency perfectly, the same soft pulse that matched what 11 had felt in the void. She stood at the center again, this time with intention, her eyes shut tight, her mind reaching out, not to attack, but to invite. When the portal opened, it wasn't dramatic. No lightning, no fire. Just a shimmer in the air, like heat bending the sky. Then it stepped through. The Demogorgon looked different, not wounded, not furious, but unsure. It moved cautiously, its limbs twitching at every sound, its head tilted slightly like it was listening for something only it could hear. The moment it spotted 11, everything stopped. She stepped forward slowly, hands open, and the creature did the same. There was no roar, no charge, no violence, just a strange, aching silence between them. Inside her mind, she reached again, and this time the connection was instant. She saw not just its pain, but its clarity. The Mind Flayer was still trying to summon more, clawing at the seams of reality. The Demogorgon had broken free, but it was still a beacon. Its very presence could open the door for others, ones that wouldn't hesitate. This was why it came, not to destroy, to warn. Before 11 could speak, floodlights erupted through the trees, military trucks rolled in, men in black armor swarmed the clearing, guns raised, orders shouted. Owens, now greyer and colder, stepped out and demanded they stand down. 11 threw up her hand instinctively, stopping their radios, their comms, everything. "Don't hurt it," she said, voice trembling. "It's not a monster." But they didn't believe her. To them, a threat was a threat, and the only good Demogorgon was a dead one. Steve and Nancy moved to shield her, while Will grabbed a speaker and boosted the pulse frequency, causing the Demogorgon to pause. It let out a low, distorted whine, not aggressive, but pleading. And then, the sky cracked. A second portal opened near the tree line, jagged, chaotic, red, and pulsing like a wound. From it, something larger moved, not like the creature they brought, but violent, primal, pure rage, one of the Flayer's remaining war beasts. The soldiers panicked. Owens shouted to fall back. Gunfire erupted. The Demogorgon turned to 11 one last time. She nodded. She didn't need to say anything. It understood. In a blur of movement, it launched itself at the breach. Not the soldiers, not the people, the breach. It clawed at the opening, forcing itself into the dimensional storm, wrestling the larger creature back. For a moment, the two tangled in a blur of limbs and screeches until the sound turned into one long, low hum. The portal imploded. Everything went still. When the smoke cleared, there was nothing left of it. No body, no trail. Just scorch marks on the ground, and a faint tremor in the air, like the last note of a song played too long. Everyone stood frozen. Owens didn't speak. The soldiers lowered their weapons slowly. No one could explain what just happened, but for once, no one tried to. Back inside the cabin, 11 sat quietly. Mike placed a blanket over her shoulders. She stared at the ground, but she wasn't broken, just thoughtful. "It remembered me," she said, "from the beginning, before it turned." Nancy crouched beside her. "So it really was just lost?" 11 nodded. "It didn't want to hurt us. It just didn't know how to be anything else." Later that night, they returned to the scorched earth. 11 kneeled down and pressed her hand against it. Where the Demogorgon had vanished, a small flower-like bloom had grown, impossibly delicate, glowing faintly in the moonlight. She smiled, tears in her eyes. "Not a monster," she whispered, "just something that needed to be seen." The world didn't write headlines about it. Owens made sure the footage disappeared, the reports sanitized, but the people who were there, they knew, and they would carry the truth forever. The next day, Dustin and Will added one more note to their makeshift creature log. Not under enemies, not under threats, but a new category, unknowns, and next to it just 2 words, tried, redeemed. In Hawkins, the lines between good and evil had always been blurry, but for the first time, they all saw what was on the other side of fear. Sometimes, what you call a monster is just something no one ever gave a second chance. What are your thoughts on this? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.